Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jan.
Susan, record.
I'm going to. I have to.
I'm coming in one.
I had to do the,
We are on YouTube now.
yes, now we're on
Okay.
YouTube. And we are recording. Oh, Christian's got a fabulous image there for his. And we're just going to wait another minute for Chris to come back and then we'll start. But hello, everyone on YouTube. And hello, everyone here. Steve Geiger, it's been great to see you so much lately.
Oh, it's great to be here. I always learn something really interesting when I'm on these calls.
We used to see each other twice a week years ago.
Yeah.
All right. Chris, we're ready whenever you are.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Biotensegrity Tea Party. And today we are thrilled to share with you a discussion, a conversation with Cristhian Castro Arenas. And Cristhian is our first fellow, the first fellow of the Biotensegrity Archive. So to begin, I would like to share with you that Cristhian has a PhD in biodesign, and he is a founding member of Big Español and faculty at the University of Buenos Aires. I'm going to invite Cristhian to give you a fuller explanation of his background because he knows it best. And also, I would probably not do very well with the pronunciation. So Cristhian, welcome.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. It's a big honor for me to be here one more time and to see you again. I am from Colombia. I'm an architect, and I have studied biodesign and a PhD in design here in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I want to share with you in this time something about my path through these tensegrity connections.
Thank you, Cristhian. And I want to just take a moment to welcome everyone else here. So great to see so many familiar faces and some new ones as well. To welcome everybody out on YouTube and let you know that we'll be watching the chat there. So if you have questions for Cristhian or just tap them in and someone will bring them to our Zoom session. But before we begin, we like to start our Biotensegrity parties with a toast. So Cristhian, would you like to begin with a toast?
Okay. At this time, I for real want to repeat my first toast at this in this place. So I want to toast for those who precede us, for who we are, and for who will come through us. Salud.
Salud. Thanks, Cristhian. And so at this point, we like to invite our audience to turn off of their cameras and turn off your mics so that the YouTube audience has a better view of what's going on. And before we turn the show over to Cristhian, I would like to ask Susan to tell us all about the Biotensegrity Archive Fellowship, because I'm sure that people here are curious to know more. Susan?
Thanks. Well, I'll just say that when Steve and his wife Olga and I founded the archive in 2015, it was with the idea of starting a nonprofit organization with a mission for supporting research, education, community building around the concept of biotensegrity as Steve teaches it. And also encourage invention, medical design, all of those related things. it was also at the beginning, we had the vision that if we could get the funds, that we would start scholarship programs. So that's always been in our mind. But in the last year, it became clear that maybe instead of a scholarship program, we could start with a fellowship. And many organizations do this. And the difference is, so you don't apply for the fellowship, it's a monetary award, and it's in recognition of accomplishments in the field. That people in the community of people that have been studying this together for many years become aware of who's doing what where and make recommendations accordingly. Cristhian is a designer, an artist, an educator, a researcher. He's got several papers out there. He's a university professor. He's one of the first people who has a PhD with an awareness of biotensegrity. That's part of what's going on there. He's done incredible community organizing. And so he's really carrying the mission of the archive forward just in his own life. So we wanted to recognize that and honor that by making him our first fellow.
Yeah, it's very inspiring, Cristhian. And also, having you here sharing your work will inspire other people to move forward and to do the types of things you're doing, or to follow their own passions and begin integrating this stuff. I see some people clapping there. Thanks, Jan. Okay, so thank you.
So I'm gonna sit in the back seat and enjoy the show.
Great, thanks. So Cristhian, I have had the good fortune of doing some projects with you, bringing your 10 shows to people on our platform, Embodied Biotensegrity. So much fun. But there's a lot more to your story than that. And so I'd like to invite you to share your history, to share your story. I've got questions like, when did you first meet Tensegrity and Biotensegrity? And when did you first meet Steve?
Wow. Okay. Through my presentation, I'll be telling you some parts of that story, of my story through Tensegrity. But just for try to answer the beginning of your question. I met Tensegrity in my first year of university, studying architecture, in a class called technology. Then we have some kind of material through unconventional structures. We were studying reciprocal frames, origami, Tensegrity, and other ones. Then in this class, in the first year of university, I for real fall in love with Tensegrity. Was like something like love at first weaving.
Yes.
Something like that. Can I share the presentation?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I want to tell you something before. When you asked me to make this presentation, the first idea in my head was to make something like a lifeline, telling chronologically the point by point, connecting the nodes. But for real, I think that everything in that history are connected, and for real, it was a very deep and emotional and significant exercise to look behind and to look all those things. So I decided to present this path using one model,
Oh, nice. Yes.
this model that all of you knows,
Mhm.
it's an icosahedron. And I decided to have to use the bars of this model, like 6 big categories of things that I want to tell you.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so let's try to share you. Okay, can you see my my
So
screen?
we see your screen, and right now we see a bluish, purplish background.
Exactly. The color of Biotensegrity archive.
Mhm. Exactly.
Okay. So in this presentation, I want to show you my integral path through tensegrity.
Mm.
Okay. So the first one that I want to say, here are my contact digital, because this is something that I always miss. So this is my email and my profiles on Instagram.
Great. And people can
And
get in touch with you there at any time.
exactly.
Super.
And if you maybe Google my name, please remember to to write the H between the T and the I, because if not, maybe Google will show you some Mexican singer. This is not me. Okay. Okay. So my integral path. This is my model. So I want to show you 6 parts. One of those, the first is something about my thesis, something about my scientific publications, something about the workshops that I have directed, something about some events that I have participated, something about the Biotensegrity parties, and something about the Biotensegrity interest groups. Okay, so let's start with the thesis. Here the history begins. The serial history begins. Okay, so first, I've made my thesis on architecture in Colombia. In Bogota, I've made this thesis was something like a symbiosis between reciprocal frames and tensegrities. And this was an application to cover an space, and we were optimizing the reciprocal frames using tensegrities. The images at the right are one of the models that we made, but we for real made a lot of models. We broke in a lot of models to see if they were working or not. We presented one of these models has something like 2 meters and 15 centimeters of diameter, something like that. And was a very, very interesting exercise. It was my first thesis, then become my thesis for the PhD. Here I only show you 2 of the applications in design or on design. If you want to know more about that, you can Google it, for example, or ask me. And this is one of the applications. This is one conceptual design of cardiac stents. So the idea was how we can control the expansion and contraction of some tissues to some application like the stents, for example. other application that we have designed was I studied the dynamics of tensegrities. In this case, I've been studied different classes of something like that Fuller and Tom Flemons called universal joints. But in this case, I proposed different or more combinations for these universal joints, and then we can apply to something like robotics or another kind of dynamic designs, because for real, the one of the more important things of tensegrity is the dynamic characteristics. And in architecture, this is one of the things that we less study. In this case, we have the PhD and the thesis. So the the B side are the scientific publications. This is a selection of the publications only referred to tensegrity and biotensegrity. And for real, I want to, or I invite you to see these two publications. In this case, this is one of the first experiments that we made on the labs, the biomechanics and engineering for health lab in the Catholic University of Argentina. And in this case, happens something interesting. We have recording and studying how the different morphologies of tensegrity, how was the behavior. In this case, we have a tetrahedron, for example. And if you can see in this place, I don't know if you see my cursor, but yes, okay. In this case, you can see a lot of the movement, but you can see the screen of the camera, and you see something of that movement. And we have some LEDs on these points, and you can see the dance of that tensegrity model. It was very, very interesting. And so we have studying how the different morphologies dance, and the results we obtained something like that. In this case, are 3 of the Platonic sonnets, and this is graphics about the normal vibrational modes. So we have a characterization of these models. So the most interesting and most exciting thing of these 2 papers was that when I published that on ResearchGate, I have a request of Stephen Levin. So I said, for real, Stephen Levin is asking for me a paper. So I said, maybe it's a bot. But I sent the paper. I have this answer, and for my surprise, I have this answer. So I said, oh, okay, this is Steve Levin. So was my first, was a moment very, very exciting because I said, I've been making something real good. So we have been doing something good. So go ahead. And some years later, I received this book. And for my another surprise, my name was cited in the book of Cristhian Castro. So I said, oh, Jesus Christ, this is a very, very good surprise. This is great. So we are doing good, the thing.
Mhm.
And that was our first two papers in English, and was a very, very good beginning.
Mhm.
So so we follow up and well, we have more research, but I don't want to deep in that. And okay, then comes the C part. C part are the workshops. Here there is something important, because Tensegrity is something that in the design or architecture schools, we have only 1 or 2 classes. No more than that, unless that any student want to deep inside this kind of structures. So one of my objectives in life was to spread this knowledge and to teach something that I have been knowing through my life. So I begin to have the workshops. This is only a selection, because for real we have made something like 20 any 13 workshops through the Latin America and connecting people around the world. And then we create this hashtag called TenseBioLat. In Spanish, this means bioinformed tensegrity in Latin America. But for real, we try to have a net of research and design on this topic, because one of the more difficult things or hard things that we have in Latin America or Hispanoamerica is that the mostly information or research about tensegrity and biotensegrity is in English or in French or in German, and is a very, very little information in Spanish. So we said, okay, let's connect all the people who speaks Spanish, who are interested in tensegrity and biotensegrity and bioinformed tensegrity. So in this selection, you can see the first workshop that I made on the University of Buenos Aires. And in the second one, in 2019, we set this hashtag TenseBioLat. This third is a workshop that we made in 2020 or 2020, and we we make a connection between the analogical fabrication of models and the digital design of tensegrities, and we include the codification to make tissues of tensegrity tissues. You can see something of that on YouTube, and a lot of workshop more. For example, here are the embodied biotensegrity. I think wasn't in 2020, but was very important connections made on this. And for example, on Belo Horizonte, Brazil, the past year, we have made, or we have with the largest tensegrity tissue.
Mhm.
We
How big
use,
was it?
tell me?
How large was it? What was its size?
We use the larger by number of components used.
Mhm.
We used near of 12,000 needles.
Yes, wow. And Christian, I just want people to know that Tensei Biolat may refer to Latin America, but your work, you're sharing it around the world, because when we did the Embodied Biotensegrity workshop, we had people from, Russia, US, Canada, Europe, and I
Yeah.
understand you did something with Fernando as well.
Of course,
So,
of course.
so I just want people to know that this work is really having an impact on a really large internationally.
And
Yeah,
this is Susan breaking in. I want people to know that picture that's kind of in the center of the I love how you say that you weave these assemblies, it's these tissues, and it's the two squiggly images at the top, kind of right of center. Those are made of lots of little tensegrities. I mean, from our perspective, right?
exactly.
Very organic, kind of almost seaweed looking. So I think it's, I'd almost like to see that one bigger so that we could see those, but just as long as everybody knows, that's all tensegrities, all tissued up, woven together. Thank you.
Also, the language that you're using about the cells and then bringing the cells together is really bringing in the biomimicry that informed by biology and what's happening.
Yes.
It's good with all the close-ups. Thank you.
Yes, and I have begun to use that language, to use to call this like a cell, and to connect the cells is a tissue, because it's because for real tensegrity is all have the same biological logic. So one of the things that I've been proposed through my thesis and through my workshops and all that is that the better way for build tensegrity, architectonically speaking, is not to have a giant, for example, a giant icosahedron, because the real thing is that for make this giant, we need a lot of material and a lot of energy to have these tensions. So it's for real not in the same direction that tensegrity works. So what I proposed is that the real thing, or the best thing to build tensegrities, is to have little cells, multiply the cells, and for real depends of the kind of cells on the kind of tissues. Any tissue have a different behavior, just like the biological. So we can build tissues hardest or soft, or fluently, or with different kind of behaviors, if we know how one cell behavior and how to connect different cells, and how a tissue have what's the behavior of one tissue. And for real, we can even to see how to replicate a biological tissue and replicate artificially. And for real, this is the way that the metamaterials or nanomaterials on tensegrity are working now.
And can you just clarify me, or let me know if I'm understanding this correctly? I remember Steve talking about when he tried to make a pelvis or something, and as the struts got larger, of course you have to put more and more energy in, and he was having problems with the struts actually buckling. And so what I'm hearing is that when you create it from tissue, from the cells, when you create the tissues from the cells, then you never have to put in that much energy because each cell is a lower energetic cost.
Energy waste.
Language.
This is something that it's a little bit my hypothesis,
Yes.
but
Can I put it a slightly different way and say what you get is an ability for the system to distribute the forces at
exactly.
multiple scale levels down into the smaller from the larger. Is that correct?
Yes, for real. A few years ago, in 2020, I think so, a paper was released from Julian Rimoli and others et al. And they were building or weaving for real, printing some metamaterials and at a nano scale, and they printed tissues with different layers of very at nanoscale cells, but they discovered that when they applied some forces, this or that tissue have a behavior very similar to a biological material, and they called something like unlocalized fail, and they knew that that material have more resistant or were more resistant than a material normally built with another kind of structure. So we can.
Did you say non-localized failure? Is that what you were saying?
Thank you.
So that when there's a disruption, when something finally does give way, it's not one big piece breaking and the whole thing falls apart, but even the failures, meaning, breakages, are distributed so that the whole can carry itself and remain, still have some of its integral, its own integrity in terms of the whole structure.
Exactly. The energy are distributed in all the system, just like our body. So all the system, all the tissue distribute the energy and looking for balance of some way. So it can resist more and more energy.
If it's the study that I'm thinking of, it was able to distribute energy so much that the fail point was exponentially beyond what the other materials were.
Yes, there is a lot of explorations to do. We have a lot of work to do to understand for real how it behaves. But I think we are doing the first steps now. Well, manner.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Can I follow?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So that's about the workshops, and the D part are the spreading. Okay. So I've been participating in two events very interesting. One are Campus Party Argentina. I don't know if you know that kind of event, but this Campus Party and TEDx are through technology, education, design, and all the topics. And I have the honor, the fortune to be in that two kind of events. A very interesting exercise too. And if you see some of these recordings, because they are in internet, at this time I was understanding in my first steps. So I was obviously saying a lot of things that I know now that wasn't precisely, but was my first steps. And for real, I do that for that, following that objective for spread that knowledge. Okay, that was about the spreading. Now comes the Biotensegrity parties. And here I have the fortune to be in various Biotensegrity parties. The first one was in the multilingual. Then I met a lot of you, and particularly in the Spanish people or the Spanish spoken people. I met Mariana and Fernando, and with them we organized later a Biotensegrity, the first Biotensegrity interest group in Hispanoamerica. So a lot of connections, very, very interesting. And the second one, you have invited me to see something about my thesis, Biotensegrity Informed Design. Then another invitation to talk about my bichos, my 10 bichos and the model zoo. Later, I have the honor to be the co-host in a party with Fernando Fraternali and Ada Amendola, that they was two researchers that I have been following a lot of time behind. That's the connections, the interesting and surprising connections that have been happening through this wonder. Then I was invited to a Biotensegrity masterclass. Then I show you a dancing tensegrity, and I have the fortune to be invited to the course of the Susan's course about everything moves. Was very, very nutritive. I met a lot of people, because something particular in these meetings is that usually I am the only one who thinks from design or from architecture, and all of you knows how body works. So I am a child surprised for all that connections that you made, and I learned a lot of things. It's great. So thank you.
Bring a lot.
Oof.
Where did you spoke earlier when we were talking the other day about meeting Dorothea as well. Do you remember when you met her?
Oh, yes. Dorothea, maybe seen one of the, maybe, she was, for example, in the workshop that we made with you, Chris.
Yeah, the one
with Biotensegrity.
Yeah.
And in another ones, here is Dorothea, for example. At the model zoo.
She was there as well. That
yes.
was a public thing.
And two in Everything Moves. I think she was in that course. Dorothea, for example, was one of the great things that have bring to me that kind of meetings is that I have the fortune to know a lot of people that I have been studying his thoughts. I have been reading the things that they have writing. So when I was in the same virtual room, for example, obviously with Steve, with Graham, with Dorothea Blonstein, with Robert Connelly, Fernando Fraternali, Gerald Young, a lot of people that I have been following his work through internet, and that for real, they are my heroes too. It's a satisfaction, impressive satisfaction for me.
And I'm sure people felt that same way about meeting you, but I just want to just jump in here and let people know, probably most people here know that Dorothea is taking the work of Tom Flemons and taking care of his archives and such, just in case people don't know. But back to you, Cristhian.
Yes, and for example, with Dorothea, we we have a lot of conversations via mail and discussions about Biotensegrity and the Tom Flemons works. And later, we have been weaving a kind of workshop to present with Fernando, even with Fernando Tejero, in one of the fascia congresses. That don't happen, but we weaved a lot of things working in that direction. So, and for example, she has a background on mathematics and systems that it's she have a incredible head. So the conversations with she are very interesting, very nutritive, incredible.
And you can understand each other in a way that people like me, I can't understand. So many of us can't understand that level of mathematics and such. So it's great to have these connections.
Yes, but for real, my language is not mathematics. My language is the morphology.
Oh, yes.
So that's the interesting thing, because for example, she understands the morphology through mathematics. And it's morphology and behavior.
Yeah.
And the mostly of you understand the morphology and behavior through the human body.
Right.
So all that connections are incredible. It's great.
Okay, so I'm looking at the time and I'm going to move us along, because I'm interested in the other aspects that you want to bring to your presentation, and I want to leave a bit of room for some Q&A at the end.
Okay, then we have the Biotensegrity interest group. So we organized these two events. The first one was the first Big Hispano. We have organized it with Mariana Barreto and Fernando Tejero, and then past days we have the first Biotensegrity interest group on Spanish presentially here in Buenos Aires. And in the first case, we have a lot of people connected through internet. Was a very great thing to have to know all these people speaking Spanish and talking about Biotensegrity. And in this case, in Buenos Aires, we have a lot of people thinking from different disciplines. For example, we have people of osteopathy, professor of Pilates, psychology, medical, dancing people, and here Diana, who is osteopathy and manual therapy too. She works with Mariana, and Andreina and I from design, and she is the director of the labs. She is physicist. So we have a lot of heads thinking about the same concept, and was very, very interesting meeting for real.
And Jennifer, it's always interesting where these new connections lead. But I just can't, can we go back to that previous slide? And the first one was online. This one here was in person. It's also available on YouTube. But I wonder, people are probably interested to know that that was at a university, yes?
Yes, it was in the Catholical University of Argentina.
Mhm.
That was the first big on a university, as I know. And it was a very, very interesting thing because it was an event inside the engineering faculty, for example. Something very, very far away of the Biotensegrity concept beginnings, but was a opportunity to have that discussion inside an academical
Mhm.
context. Was very, very interesting.
And to really bring this work both inside an academic context and to Spanish speakers like you and Mariana and Fernando, you're really pivotal in sharing this work in Spanish and English as well. Your contributions are beyond just in Spanish, but in English as well. But we're really
Yeah.
grateful to have people, you and people like you, doing this sharing.
Yeah, thank you. But for real, because I and we are connected with all of you for real. Because for real, it's just like Tensegrity for real. Everything is connected. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
Yeah, it feels that way, doesn't it? And it's fun and exciting to really jump on board and start sharing with people. One of the things I would love, of course, is to be together with everyone in person. And to,
Yes, we have
to
to do
build
it.
one of your Tensebichos together with you would be amazing.
Yes, the Tensebichos was another kind of exploration. I will tell you in a few moments.
Go ahead.
But for it, until now, it was the 6 points that I want to share with you about that integral path.
Thank you. I love the way you shared it too and presented it.
Thank you.
Okay, do we want to see if there's any questions either on YouTube or in the chat? Now would be the time. And you've also got some more to share on the Bichus as well. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's just give people a chance to write a question.
Can we make clear the bichos are bugs? Is the
Bichos
English
are
word?
bugs.
Yes. So you're bringing all these, building all these little Tensegrities, not little, but they're the size of a hand, maybe, and then putting them all together to make these different bichos, these different bugs. It's such a wonderful thing. But you have pictures to show. We do have Mariana's got something she's going to tell us, but then we don't want to wait. If we go right into the Q&A, we'll never see the bichos.
That's true. So maybe we should see the Bichus. And Mariana, do you want to come up and share what you wanted to share? And in the meantime, we're going to have a sister tea party in Spanish, and Mariana and Cristhian will be sharing these same topics in Spanish. Is that right?
So right.
Where is Mariana? I don't.
Let's see the beaches, and then I'll ask. Don't worry.
Okay,
Sure.
great. Let's see the Bichus then.
Okay. Let's see the bichos. The Tensebichos. Are you watching my screen?
I see your screen. Yeah.
You see my screen? Okay. Okay. Tensebichos. Tensebichos was thing that I was having or weaving, and they born in a very maybe conflictive time that I have been. For real, I have been thinking about how to share the basically the infinite morphologies that Tensegrity can have for real. Because one of the things that happens when you look for Tensegrity on internet is that you usually see the same morphologies. You see the icosahedron or the platonic solids or the towers, or something beyond are the sculptures of Snelson, or actually the sculptures of Gerald de Jong that are great. But they are based on the same kind of cells.
Mhm.
So for real, when we create this kind of technique to weave, we have a lot of variations for the weaving, and we can have a lot of tissues. Sure. So one thing, for example, I stop share that. And are you watching me? Sure.
Here, let me just
To
spot.
share. Tell me.
I'm okay now. So
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so for example, this is the classical icosahedron, or the expanded octahedron, as you wish to call it. So for example, one of the great things of Tensegrity, as happens in the nature, are that they can to transform. They transform, and they have different behaviors. So for example, to show you the tensebichos, I want to show you, for example, one of the basic transformations of the icosahedron, that maybe you know that, but we can transform the icosahedron in a tetrahedron, just moving ones of the tensors.
Mhm.
But you need to know how works that connections.
Mhm.
So for example, I am moving some of the tensors. Sorry that I was out of the screen. So here I have a tetrahedron. Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
So the tetrahedron has directly another kind of behavior.
Mhm.
Sure. For example, here I have a icosahedron, I have a tetrahedron in my left hand, and they are different morphologically speaking, and the behavior of they two are very different. For example, here is the icosahedron, and the tetrahedron, because it's based only on triangles, is more stable. Sure.
Mhm.
And I want to use this morphology. The tetrahedron have 4 triangular faces to present the tensebichos.
Mhm.
So I will present 4 categories of tensebichos.
Mhm.
Okay,
Cool.
one using any one of the faces of the tetrahedron. So the first part are the seeds of the tensebichos. Why this is the tensebicho zero, and how the zero tensebicho,
Hmm.
how it born. The moment when the tensebichos has born was in 2021, a moment when in Colombia they have, because I was here in Argentina, but was a very revolutionary moment. We have a lot of disturbs. We have a lot of social and educational, and a lot of things has happening. So particularly a friend called Laura, she proposed via Instagram to create things to the people who dedicate to art or design or something, to create something thinking about that moment. So I said, okay, I obviously I will weave Biotensegrity. So I begin to weave. If you see, this is basically a Tensegrity tower connected in the two
Mhm.
in the two extremes.
Yeah.
But this is the zero, because one thing that happens in Colombia, there is a number that is 6,402 that let's say that are the false positives that
Mhm.
are victims of the conflict and for different reasons. So I used that zero, and that is my way to represent that zero and the time of broken
Mm.
happening in Colombia. That
Mhm.
was my way to represent that moment. Okay, that so since that moment I said, okay, this is the moment that I have been waiting. But for real, personally, I have passing for a moment that I was very far away of the creation of Tensegrity, that is for real the thing that is my passion, because I was very deep in the or inside the professor things. So I was very in another thing. So I say, okay, daily, I want to, for real, the think about the daily meditation was something that, or was the words that Susan proposed when
Mm.
I tell him. So she said, "Oh, that's your daily meditation." So yes, it's true. For me, it was a daily experimentation, but for real, was a daily meditation for real. So I said, "Okay, this is my bicho zero." How this begins? It begins here. This is for real the minimum cell that we use to weave. It's a needle and an elastic band. When we connect these two things, this is the minimal tensegrity for real, and we can have a lot of connections. So we said, okay, I want to teach something through these experimentations. So I said, okay, the second part of the tensebichos, I begin to use. These are the needles that we designed to the workshops, the Tenseviolat workshops. So I I used a lot of this, and the first part was, okay, I am weaving. I can to weave all the basic cells with these same components. So I said, okay, the basic cells, everybody knows that. Okay, now we are going to weave some tissues, but these tissues are, one more time, the same kind of cells connected. Until that moment, for some people that have not seen, o sea, this is something that maybe everybody knows. And I was needing more fun. So I said, okay, let's go one more step ahead. So I said, okay, let's take the basic cell proposed by Steve, that was the icosahedron, and was the iconic cell on Biotensegrity, and let's do transform a little this cell, and let's make different kinds of tissues. So I begin to make a different kind of tissue any day. So I have different quantify of cells and connect in different ways and transform different ways. And I have a lot of experiments using the transformed icosahedral cells. This is the C part of this experimentation. There is a lot, obviously this is a selection. And then I said, okay, I was using the cells that everybody knows. What happens if I need to show another kind of cell that we can make with the same kind of technique and another kind of material that anybody around the world can use. What are you watching here? Any one of these sticks are ice cream sticks. Okay, so we can use any kind of sticks that you have in any part of the world that you are, and have two cuts and have another kind of elastic band and connect it. So in this part of the experimentation, I said, okay, let's make a basic cell and connect different kinds of symmetry connections, for example. And why 7? Because the week have 7 days. So it was an experiment made week. In 1 week, I have a kind of tissue. This is, for example, one. This is another one. And if you see the basic cell here is for real something like the first cell that you have seen, but I begin to connect that new module 1 to 1 1, sure, and have the same the same kind of experimentation. But when I posted this experimentation, when I was in this one, that one, Mariana write me and she said, wait, you need to show that video to Steve. Send it to Steve. So I sent it to Steve. And but why? Because that video have a behavior very, very, very particular. So for real, I want to share this for you. And I want to invite to Steve and to Graham to tell us what you see in this behavior. Please share with us. What do you see here, Steve?
It's biphasic transformations. Just by flipping it, it just slips. It's a variation of the Jacob's ladder kind of thing. It's because it just by one movement it completely changes shape.
It reminds me of when Graham brought a Mobius strip tensegrity for Steve. And at the first TC Big meeting, we passed it around. Graham was in town and we all passed it around. And I did that same move that you're doing with your hands at the beginning there, where I sort of brought the bottom circle in toward itself, folded it in and back. And the whole thing bowed down. The top part of the kind of figure 8 bowed down and then bowed back up again. And so, yeah, it's an emergent behavior, right?
Exactly. And
do you remember
Graham or there?
Yeah, yes, I do. Yes. It's fascinating. I'd forgotten about that time actually, Susan. But this is now you reminded me. That's good. I'll make another one.
And one of the great things of this kind of experimentation is that, for example, from design, or if we see that kind of behavior from design, we have a lot of tools for innovation. And this is, you can open a universe of possibilities if you understand how the morphology behaves, and if you understand how to connect and how is the pattern of connection of the morphology from the cell and even the morphology of the tissue. Until this time, I obviously didn't know this kind of tissue and this kind of behavior. But something that happened with the tensebichos is that I begin to think in the codification of the tensegrity to know how is the code of the single cell, how is the code that we can modify or connect to have a tissue, and then you can characterize this kind of behavior. So you can design with this. It was a very, very interesting thing that we have learned.
It
And
also, you've
so,
seen Tom Flemons has the biphasic with the 4 different,
yes.
Yeah. So it reminds me of that. Wonderful. Sorry.
No, thank you. And this is another tissue. And here, for example, when I begin to weave the growing tissues, I have another factor in this equation, and was the time, because I have 7 days, and in that 7 days, the elastic bands have changed, because in my workshop, I have a big window, so the sun comes, and it transform the elastic bands. So, for example, if you see the first cell are for real, two prismatic cells, one of based on a pentagon and one based on a tripod, one inside another one. And I begin to connect one inside, or one next connected to the other one. But with the days passing, the sum of these elastic bands have been dying or modifying. So some parts of this tissue was compressed more or tensed more. So all of that have the result of the tensebicho have another morphology. And for real, anytime it looks more nearest of a bicho, for real, or at least for me.
So you're getting
And
experience the natural changes and adaptation that's happening from the dynamic in the system in terms of environment and how that's influencing the elastics.
Yes. And the last tensebicho that I weaved was that one. And for real, what you are watching here is a model made for an artistic work. Here, this model was based on the seed of life. And then, if you see, is for real the three-dimensionalization. I don't know for real if this word works in English. but it's the transformation, the three-dimensional transformation of the seed of life. So I stopped sharing. I want to show you here. So if you see in this or from this way, you can see
actually where
something.
you're standing now, or even back just like a little.
Exactly. You can see here, you see the seed of life, and you have the displacement, and in a spiral way. So, for example, this have another emergent behavior. If you see, if I compress,
Yes, it has the in, out, and around by emotional.
Exactly. And for real, I have not moving my hands in a spiral way, but the tissue is having this behavior.
It's like the jitterbug when you push straight down and it does that.
Exactly.
Nice.
So this is a very, very, that's why I enjoy a lot to weave bichos every day.
Every day. Thank you so much. And you know, just seeing this last presentation on the bichos, it's really driving home how bringing the cells together changes everything again. It's awe-inspiring. And even within your journey of creating these, well, your 100 and however many days, 60 days, you're showing both the overall impact of it, but you have these moments of another mind-blowing experiences with when the emergent properties are just appearing out of nowhere. And I'm assuming, or I'm guessing, I guess I would say, that those were unexpected for you as well until they were there. Like this whole in, out, and around, did you know that was going to happen? I know you've been studying a little bit about the behaviors, but my question is, were you trying to create that, or did that just emerge?
Sometimes I have learned how a cell or a tissue begins to have some behavior. Then I can to design that behavior or a tissue, but mostly are emergent things that for real are surprising me.
Okay, cool. Now, Mariana, I know you've got a question, so I invite you to come on up and ask that. And then I will invite those of you who are off camera, if you wish to turn your cameras on, to raise your hand if you have a question. So first Mariana and then Graham.
Thank you, Cristhian. Amazing. Like I'm so happy and seeing the whole progress of the story. Like it's just, oh my God, amazing. First, I want to say, like, Cristhian is, at least for me, my go-to person. Every time I have any question about, okay, forces, tensegrity is a triangle, a tensegrity, like I keep bothering him a lot, especially since we've been working in our PT course with the physiotherapist. And every time we have this, you know, I ask him like this tiny question and I get this huge answer with resources. And so it's just such a huge well of information. And it's just, I just want to say thank you, Cristhian, because you've been so how you say that, selfish, and just pouring out everything you know and you experienced. That's one thing. Second is, because of course I follow him on Instagram, and every time I see one of those pictures, that particular one that I completely forgotten about, that I send this to it's most kind of my kids in that bicho, right? Like you or one day you put something and said that's a muscle contraction right there, or a muscle activity right there, right? So I think that the way you play that, because it's not only that you post the thing spinning around, you also post the interaction when you're playing with it, and it's so informative. And then lastly, in that course that Cristhian you put together,
Mariana, can you repeat yourself? You went off.
oh,
audio
I'm
for
sorry,
a
my
moment.
internet is not the best. Yeah, okay. Where did I cut
You
myself?
said, and then lastly, in the course.
In the workshop that you did with both Chris and Cristhian put together when we were building the I think having the tools, that's something that I found so useful, because they're very easy to build, right? You have the needles and you have the last
Weep.
Okay, I think we're losing Mariana. Graham, do you want, if you want to respond, Cristhian, you can, or else we'll just invite Graham to come on up. Go ahead, Graham.
Okay, thanks, Cristhian. It's really interesting. My question was, do you design those models, Tenso is it? Do you design them on a computer first and then make the physical model, or it's a bit of both, playing with the model and then putting it on the computer?
No, for real, in the case of Tensevichos, have been entirely an analogical approach. Because another thing that I say and I propose is that if you have not the knowledge about how to model digitally a simple icosahedron, you can do it digitally, but you can learn fast how to weave manually. And if you connect with somebody, for example, as Gerald de Jong, who knows how to make this digitally, you can to know that configuration have balance, have some kind of behavior, and then you can have the information to say to the computer, I want to build this digitally and play with that. But you can learn fastly how to weave more than you can learn how to program.
Right, yes. So presumably you have lots of, or at least I do have lots of failures that go nowhere, but you don't know until you've actually made it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, is that in design and architecture, we called it the form finding process. So digitally, the form finding process is some kind hard, but for real, if you know the beginnings of this kind of approach, if you know, for example, the Sagrada Familia of Gaudí, this kind of form finding was hanging catenaries, for example. And then they came to understand how to build that. Or the Frey Otto approach that he was playing with bubbles, for example, and then they pass all that information to a computer and they can to build the roof of the Munich stadium, for example. It's something like back to the roots.
Right. Okay.
And I think that's important and something to emphasize for everybody, this change of failure to the idea of exploring and learning. And that was something that struck me when you were talking about the architecture. You talked about building and then I think taking it apart again or having them collapse was the idea that I had in my mind. And that's not a failure like so many that we've been kind of taught to think of it, but it's actually an exploration of process, an exploration of behavior. And it sounds to me as though your whole approach is then to take that and ask about it and find out, well, okay, so what's next? and earlier before we opened up to YouTube, you were talking about when you're teaching, and it really came to me, and you shared that it's a sense of play that you bring to all of your classes. And this is important for all of us to know and understand. And I personally would love to be in one of your classes because this approach lets me learn better, or helps me to learn.
I think that something that I think all of you know better than me, or better than the people on the academic world, is that you work with your hands and with the bodies, and the learning who passed through our body is the better way to understand the things, the phenomena. And you can fail, obviously not with another body, but you can prove different things, and you can do it. For example, if you are playing with this kind of things, you can do it one time and another time, or you say that doesn't work, so I can do another thing, and you can do it one time and another time. And I want to show you another last thing. Can I?
Great.
Okay.
And what do you want us to
Okay.
spotlight you, or are you sharing? Are you going to show us visually or on the screen?
Two things.
Okay.
The two things.
I did spotlight because I
So-
want to see it big.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So, for example, I have shown you now the transformation from a icosahedron to a tetrahedron. Sure. Now I want to show you another transformation of an icosahedron. And this is for see, sure. So this is something that only learned through the experimentation. And this is for real something that you, until now, you can see on the books or on the internet until now. But if you connect this in this kind, this tetrahedron, you can see something something like a triangle. But if you include another 3 needles to close that triangles, or to weave all that triangles, you will have something like that is,
Oh,
you can see 3 triangles with
that are interlinked. It's like Borromean rings.
Exactly. So I want to show you this. Maybe here.
That's very exciting.
Wait. Artistic explorations. Why? Because with this kind of transformation, we have something like a Borromean knot, sure, and we have 3 triangles in this case interlinked. So I want to show you 3 artistical explorations that we have made. Okay. The first of this is this that we called metaespacios. This is one exploration that we've made with the PhD and architect Maritza Granados Manjarres, Misha. She was the first that invited me to explore the tensegrity in an artistical way. And it was something that we made in an event in the Pontifical University of Catholic of Argentina. with the Levis. And the thing happening here was to we have not a lot of money to do it, but we have a big space to cover in some way. So we say, okay, let's to think like the nature do the things. So let's build a cell that can be simple, can use a little quantity of material, and we can connect it at different ways, and we can cover the space, replicate and cover the space. She is specialized on origami. So she proposed a module called Sonobe that is very popular. And the cell that we used in the Tensegrity side was a transformation of the icosahedron of 3 bars. That I have it here. You can see we have 3 bars, but this is for real, a transformation of the icosahedron. We usually have another tensor line here, but we open it and we have this. And this little change have or we can weave a lot of different tissues with this little variation. So we replicate it in that event that was called Science, Art, and Design. We have our 2 workshops, one about origami and one about tensegrity. And we have at the end an artistical appropriation of the space. And the first one was led in the Catholic University. The second one was on the University of Buenos Aires. And the third one was in the University of San Martin here in Buenos Aires too. So we can to have to unweave and to weave another and occupy the space in another way. This is the first, and the second one is that. Here, for example, we have the same kind of cells in the tensegrity in the tensegrity case, the same cell but with in another way. So we call that Dragon's Nest. It was in Bogotá, Colombia, at the Pontifical University, la Universidad Javeriana de Bogotá. So we made that with the students of a class called New Paradigms. And we have something like the similar way. And the third one was the most recent exploration that we called portals. For real was a proposal of Alexis Zapata, and he is a designer, and we made it with Andreina, that some of you know. And the proposal here was to modificate a product that was for real 2 doors. That was a new product that was launching one enterprise called Okipinti. They dedicate to build kitchens and closets. So we say, okay, let's gonna use discard material, only waste material. So we use this is the 2 little models, the little models, to know how the behavior of materials. So we use glass mirrors and some aluminum profiles. And that was the first proofs. Here are we weaving. is Alexis, Andreina, and me. And that was the first configuration. So that's the two doors. They have more than 2 meters of higher and something like 18 centimeters. And for example, it was the aluminum profiles and was for real 3 portals, 2 inside the 2 doors. That is Tensegrity in a architectonical way. This kind of Tensegrity, it's a open Tensegrity. It's an open Tensegrity. Why? Because when we, for example, we see an icosahedron, we have a closed system itself. So this is a cell that the system is closed in itself. But when the Tensegrity needs a frame outside to have the balance, the tension, we called it an open Tensegrity, just like the rooftop of some stadiums, for example. This is another kind of Tensegrity. So we used for real the open and the closed Tensegrity for make these 3 portals. The portal of the center is made with this kind of cell. And it was used in the design night. Occhipinti is the enterprise that where was our sponsor. And we have another exhibition on the celebration of the centennial of a building, iconical building here in Buenos Aires called Palacio Barolo, that is for real building inspired on the Divine Comedy of Dante Alighieri. So that building was celebrating the 100 years old. So was an exhibition of art, and we have the fortune to be here. So, and we are waiting here, and this is our 3 another artistic explorations.
This is fantastic. I mean, you are doing so much and on so many different planes and areas. Now, I understand that we're trying to keep this at an hour and a half, but if it's okay, just to stay a little while longer, I'd like to, are we okay? Just to hold on for a couple of minutes before we turn off the YouTube live to see if there's any questions, any comments. Susan, that all right?
Yeah, Mariana, did you have one? From before? Okay. Camilla, did you have?
My internet didn't help me, but it's okay. I just wanted to share how wonderful Cristhian is. We know that already.
Thank you.
Camilla, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Cristhian, for showing us your magic. It brought some new questions for me, and I'm really excited to explore that. And I would like to ask you, because I see you play a lot and you're changing the connections, so that might be the reason, but why are you using the elastic strings? Because we are usually, when we model, we're using the non-elastic ones. So if you can talk a bit about that, I would be curious. Thank you.
It's a very good question. That's the reason, or one of the reasons why people have fear or hate to Tensegrity. Because to weave a cell or a tissue with non-elastic tensors, it's very hard, because you must to know the exactly length of any tensor to have the balance of any cell. But if you use elastic bands, you don't have an absolutely symmetric cell or absolutely symmetric tissue, but you can experiment different configuration fastly. So you can make a lot of experiments daily, for example, and don't die in the trying. That's why we are using the elastic bands. But for example, the last for example, for the portals, we were using the elastic bands. It was a nylon and inelastic.
Right. So I suppose you choose the material in part depending on the behavior that you're hoping to elicit from your structures.
Exactly. And for example, if you used the elastic bands in a way like a finding method, then you can say, okay, I like this cell, I like this configuration, so that you can do, for example, this is the same cell of this tissue, but in this case, all the components are metallic, because you know now the length of any component, so you can change the kind of component, the kind of material, and obviously you have another behavior, but you can know that that kind of cell for real have a behavior like a tensegrity.
Mm-hmm.
This is for real a cell that you can't see on the books, for example.
That's one of
And
the
it
things
was
that I've done when making models is first make it with the elastic, and then I'll take an inelastic and trace it over top, just because I don't know the math.
exactly.
Go ahead, Bob.
Cristhian, thank you so much. I've got so many questions and thoughts running through my head. It's hard to express them, but let me try to ask one question. I like the discussion of the force distribution trying to be most efficient on the cellular level and then expanding it to the tissue level itself. So the one question I have is the tensor that you showed that had the spiral motion and things. So looking at different joints in the body and different joint shapes, do you think that the cells naturally change their morphology based on what they need the tissue to do, whether they need a simple, movement of a joint versus one that requires more of a spiral motion? Does the body do that naturally?
The idea when I made these experiments, or when I made the tensebichos, is for real to know the possibilities of any configuration. And as I have been saying, this is a form finding method. And when you know this is a behavior that you like or that you need, then, for example, is when we can think like, for example, in my case, like a designer. So if you want to change, or for example, in this case, when you have to change the materials, you must to think what kind of materials and the morphology have the knots and the tensors and the bars, or if you have a plane or any kind of variations. And if you want to compare maybe this behavior in a scientific way with a biological tissue, for real, we need a lot of study between one and another. I don't know if I am answering right your question, but I think that for real, that if you want to understand some biological behaviors through the use of this kind of models, you can be near of these behaviors, and you can understand how are that behaviors. But for real, for emulate in a right way that biological behaviors, we need for real to connect a lot of head thinking and knowing a lot of things like mathematics, the biological behavior of the materials, what's the kind of material and the process to fabrication to have this kind of behaviors or that kind of materials, to have an appropriate way or to have an appropriate emulation of a biological bicho, for example, or a biological part. That's what I say. We have a lot of homework.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question was more of just a theoretical basis. As you were discussing it, that's where my brain was. Like, I wonder if, when you need a slightly different angle, does the morphology of the tissue change for an entire structure to allow an efficient spiral, which other joints might not need because it's more of a planar motion that would have a different shape. So it's just kind of a more theoretical basis, but based on your modeling, it's like, I wonder if certainly more research.
I'll jump in here, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here. Yes, the morphology changes and all joint motion is spiral. All motion in the body is spiral. And there are no simple hinge joints as we look at them. They all joint motion is spiral. Just think of the screw home mechanism of the knee, the carrying angle of the elbow. When you bend your finger, it always comes, if you do one at a time, they all hit the same point. All motion in the body spiral. And yes, the morphology and strength changes as the body needs.
Yes, Steve, thanks for that. I mean, I certainly would understand that, but also looking at different joints. I mean, some joints might require a more spiral than another.
Yes.
So it requires more spiral that can cause the morphology to change to allow a greater degree of spiral at that particular joint as opposed to others.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Christian's amazing.
Thank you.
Just amazing.
Yeah, that's obvious. Thank you.
I know, thank you.
Okay, and
Thank you,
Steve,
Bob.
have your hand up. Do you have anything else you want to say before?
No, that was it.
Okay, so I would like to thank you, Cristhian, for sharing this morning and for your years of work. I can't wait to see what's next and having this conversation again in another 5 and another 10 years. The amount of learning and surprises that are going to come, it's very exciting. And thank you everyone for being here. Now, as you know, we love to close our tea parties with a toast, and I'd like to invite Graham to come on up and share a closing toast.
Thank you, Chris. Well, thank you so much, Cristhian, for this playing with models as a fellow modeler. It's always exciting to see what other people do, because it's so important to have different ideas thrown into the pot to understand biotensegrity. So raise a glass or your favorite tipple, and cheers to Cristhian and Biotensegrity.
Cheers.
Cheers. Salud.
That was fantastic.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cristhian. It's no mean feat to speak for that long in your second language. It's congratulations. That was amazing.
When I first started working with Cristhian, I could only speak English and he could only speak Spanish, and he's progressed and I've fallen behind. I still can't speak a word of Spanish.
Excellent. indeed.
I think we'll say goodbye to YouTube at this point and go into our post-party mode. Anybody out there who wants to be able to join the after parties, get on the Biotensegrity archive email list. And you can join us on Zoom. It's a little more personal and goes longer. And the other thing is that if you want to support the archive efforts to award fellowships like we've done with Cristhian, please donate to the archive.
Right, and our donations are being matched right now.
Yes, now through the end of December 2023, an anonymous generous donor has agreed to match all donations up to the total of $2,500. So open your pockets. Thank you.
And before you shut off the YouTube live stream, Susan, I just want to give a plug for our first Biotensegrity party in Spanish. Is there someone here that can say that in Spanish? Because I am not able to. Maybe
Cristhian probably can.
Can you just share the date for that? Will be September the
15, I believe.
15.
I think too, and how people can find out about it. That will also be the archive email list. Yes.
Yes.
Cristhian, would you say a few words about that for us, please, in Spanish?
In Spanish.
Por favor.
First I want to try in English, but for real, I want to thank to all of you because you are inspiring a lot of people to do and to believe and to know that they can follow your curiosity, and you are having you are giving energy to do that in any language. But in Spanish, muchas gracias, de verdad, porque es increíble poder compartir con ustedes toda esta experimentación y es maravilloso poderles conocer, así sea virtualmente. So I want to thank you. I love to know you, and please follow to doing this thing. Thank you for make the Biotensegrity parties. It was a very, very, very interesting point for the humanity, for real. Thanks.
Y por favor, en septiembre 15. Septiembre 15. Otra vez esta tea party, pero totalmente en español.
Así es.